can I introduce our first speaker for today? I'd like to introduce our first speaker for today. Is it Alexander or Alex?
Neither.
Neither.
Alexandre.
Oh, Alexander. Okay, great. Excellent. Now, you were the recipient of the first run. Now, forgive me, what does WCPS stand for?
World Championship of Public Speaking.
Speaking. Excellent. So congratulations on that. And you are going to give us the recipe for a winning speech. So I'm glad Raghu and everyone else is recording this because I'm going to go back and listen to it. So the floor is yours, Alexander.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much, Ashvin. It's a pleasure for me to be here. Let me look at my time. I've got 30 minutes total, correct? Okay, perfect.
Correct. Yes.
All right. So I won't spend too much time in introducing all this and saying what has happened and what was my journey. I think what's important to know is that there are different ways of approaching a speech, of crafting a speech, and I have my way of doing it. Other world champions or first runners up have their ways also. I'm going to share what was the winning recipe for me. What was one of the key ingredients or the key ingredients to creating a great story. I'm going to start sharing my screen, and I'm using Mentimeter. Now, if you're not familiar with that, you might become familiar with it soon. It's a way for me to be more interactive when I present. You can play along by voting on the different slides and even using the Q&A to put questions in there. And I'm going to be able to see it interactively with my mobile device. So check it out. I can even control it with this. It's pretty cool. I like it. So here I'm putting back the QR code, and this is really fun because you can use your mobile device to scan this code and go to the interactive presentation. So you will find ways to interact directly with your mobile phone. And if not, no problem, you'll still be able to use the chat inside of Zoom to interact with me. All right, let's go ahead. And I'm going to start with one question. And the question is quite important. And I guess it depends on why you're listening to me today. The question is, do you want to create your best speech ever? It's a simple question. Just yes or no will suffice. If you're not in Mentimeter, you can also write just Y or N in the chat. Looks like everyone wants to create their best speech ever. Now, winning or almost winning the World Championship of Public Speaking, I consider that the two speeches I created last year in the International Speech Contest, those were my best speeches ever. And it's because I followed a formula that I had never really tried before, even though I was aware of it. And you may be familiar with it, and it is The Hero's Journey from Joseph Campbell. Now, before I continue, I can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. I was counting very fast, eh? I see 11 faces, and the other, I'm trying to do math here, 23 faces are not there. Ah, Rhonda is back. Hello. Rhonda, I saw earlier there was a little hand close by to yours, and it looked like it was not yours. So you've got a special guest with you as well. I do encourage everyone to turn on their camera. It's going to be it's more interesting for the speaker when we can see the faces. It's like if we're if we're in person and we see the faces, we see the faces, right? When I participated in the World Championship last year, the only face I saw was my own because there were cameras on site and there were cameras at home for people who were watching, but I was not allowed to see them. and that made me sad. but I'm really happy that I'm able to see you today. Thank you for turning on your cameras. All right, so the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. It's so let me ask again if you are familiar with it. Now that I've got more faces, let's see the hands if you're familiar, or if you are not familiar, now raise your hand with the hero's journey from Joseph Campbell. Okay, all right. So let's go over it very quickly. I'll say it simply. Joseph Campbell, wow, close to 100 years ago, I suppose, studied old myths and stories, and I don't know if discovered is the right word, because he might not have been the first one to discover, to find out this, but he really meticulously studied many stories, like hundreds, thousands, and created a model to analyze these stories, and discovered that in every great story, stories that are from many, many different cultures and from hundreds or even thousands of years ago, there is the same journey, a main character that goes through an important journey. So these, sorry, I need to remember which button I'm pressing. What I'm going to show you next are the 12 steps that are part of every one of these stories. We won't read them all. What I can do is share with you a link, and you'll be able to read more about this. I'll share you a link in the chat later on. But these are generally the 12 steps for the hero's journey. So the main character, and this is true in great novels as well as movies, and even in old myths that have been passed down from generation to generation in a lot of cultures. And it's basically a main character lives an adventure, goes through hardships, manages to triumph, and comes back to share what Joseph Campbell calls the elixir. Look at this at the last step number 12, return with the elixir to share whatever magic has been found during that ordeal. Now, this is quite complicated, and it's probably the reason why I hesitated so long before really trying to apply it to a 7-minute speech. So what can we do to craft a story using the hero's journey, but make it simpler for us, for Toastmasters, especially for a speech contest, but any story that you want to tell? I've broken it down in only 6 parts. And here they are. I call it the 7-minute hero, a hero's journey in 6 steps. By the way, you see a second name, right? I mentioned Joseph Campbell. The other one, C. Vogler, that's Christopher Vogler. He was a screenwriter for Disney. And in 1986, he took the big volume, about 500-page book from Joseph Campbell, and reduced it to 5 pages, to a 5-page memo for the other screenwriters of Disney. And that's now if we take these 12 steps and we analyze every Disney movie, you will see those 12 steps, and it's even it almost ruins watching a movie, because you see the pattern in every movie, and you can analyze it because they follow those steps so closely. So, without wanting to ruin your speeches, here is the basis of the hero's journey for a 7-minute speech. The first step that you see, I don't know where I need to point for you. The first step you see is the everyday life. The hero is seen in their everyday life. Now, the hero, in most cases, when we look at the World Championship of Public Speaking, and usually at all levels of the international speech contest, the speakers are sharing a personal story, right? And usually when you create your own stories, I suppose you're creating your own, you're sharing your own personal story as well. So in this case, the hero is you. You are the hero of your own story. You're the main character. So at the very beginning, we just have you in everyday life before any big thing starts to happen. But for something to happen, there needs to be a trigger, some initiating incident that we call the call to adventure. Something happens that makes you obligated to go on an adventure. I'll show you an example in the next slide that comes from my own final speech from last year. So apologies in advance if I go a little fast, but if you have any questions, I'll take them. Once there is a call to action, or call to adventure, pardon, this is where the main story happens, the adventure and difficulties. If you watch a movie, a superhero movie, for example, are you familiar with Spider-Man? I like to use that as an example. So Spider-Man is just a regular guy in high school, Peter Parker, and he gets bitten by a spider. So that you can call it, when he sees the results of that, that's when he is called to start an adventure. And then, of course, during the whole movie, or if you're reading the comic books, there are the enemies and the allies and you could say gurus, people who are, or mentors who are there to help. So people are there to help or hinder the hero. And throughout all these adventures, now if you have your own adventure, maybe it's a story about, why don't someone, does someone want to write an example in the chat, or just yell out an example of what could be your call to adventure? And maybe we can invent something with that instead of using Peter Parker.
Maybe a health challenge.
Sure, a health challenge, for example. But what could be a health challenge? So, okay, so if you go to the doctor for a regular appointment, and the doctor gives you, a bad news, you have a health issue. Well, that could start a whole adventure where you don't know what you're going to do. You need to change your habits, but it's difficult, and some people are there to help you, and maybe you are there to hinder yourself. Sometimes the enemy is not always someone else. Sometimes it can be you. Throughout those difficulties and that adventure comes the next step, number 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, the great challenge. And here the hero faces the greatest challenge yet and surmounts seemingly impossible odds. In those superhero movies, though, that would be like the big battle at the very end, when the superhero seems to, when you think that he won't make it, right? There's always that part in the movie where you think, oh no, he's not gonna make it. This is the end of my superhero. But he manages to get up and win. Now this can happen too in your own personal story. If it's about your health difficulties, then hopefully you were able to surmount those odds, those seemingly impossible odds, and get out of it. Now, when you manage to go through a great challenge, you transform. Now, this is very important, this next step, the transformation, because without that, it's like you haven't learned anything from your own story and your own adventure. sometimes when this happens mostly with younger people, young, this is small, but with younger people, I coach a lot high school kids. And in high school, sometimes they'll start their story, and then I ask, okay, well, what did you learn? And they're like, I don't know yet, because they're not done. They're still living their adventure. So I tell them, all right, this is an ongoing project. But we are a little bit older, and usually we have learned something from our great challenges. So this is the transformation where the hero experiences the benefits of having lived that adventure. And by living the adventure and transforming yourself, in other words, it's like you're a different person at the end of your story than at the beginning. And because you've been through that challenge and that transformation, you are now able to share your wisdom. And this is the last step. Sometimes we will call it the call to action at the end of a speech, where the hero shares wisdom to improve the world. I choose those words, improve the world, especially in the context of the international speech contest, where because it's a general audience, very diverse, if it's something that is sometimes your call to action would be for a particular type of audience. But if you're sharing your wisdom with the whole world, then I encourage you to find a call to action, sharing the wisdom that makes the world a better place. You can ask yourself a question such as, if everybody follows this advice, will it make the world a better place? If the answer is yes, you've got a good story. Perhaps a great story. Perhaps your best speech ever. So what I'd like to do now is, well, first let me ask you, for the for those of you that I see there, and you can write in the chat just a why, if it's clear. Usually I go a little slower in those 6 steps, but I just want to see, because you are professionals, right? I thought, yeah, you can take it, you can go fast. So is it clear? Give me a thumbs up or a yes in the chat. Are there any questions before we go on? I see none. Okay, all right. Oh, very clear. So let me show you the example that is from my final speech from last year. Now, can you raise your hand if you have seen my final speech, Missing Ingredient, from last year? Okay, about half the audience. You can watch it online. It was posted by Toastmasters International, and if you take those 6 steps, and by the way, I'm going to tell you how you can get a PDF of that of the slide that you saw. So when you watch it, you'll be able to recognize those 6 steps, I think. And if I share it very quickly, in the everyday, those 6 steps, you see them on the left, and you see the description in the middle of that table, and on the right side, I guess this is the right side for you, on the right side, you see I've just put 1 or 2 sentences for each one of those steps. The everyday life, the beginning of my story, I just share that there's a traditional family reunion with my grandmother, grandmama, her daughter, my aunt Christiane, and the famous, the world famous no-bake cake that if you were in Nashville, you might have tasted it. The call to adventure. Now this one was a tough one because I wasn't exactly sure when to start my story, but it made the most sense to start when something dramatic happens. And this is when my aunt passes away and the family struggles to stay together. So the I'm called to adventure and I want to do my part. So I try to make the cake that my grandmother made and my aunt made. And here is where we get the difficulties. And I use my uncle as the anti-hero or the enemy, the foe in my story. Now, he's not really mean. If you saw my speech, maybe he seems a little more severe than what he really is. By the way, he did see the speech and he was okay with it. And so the adventure and the difficulties, finally, after 12 years, I managed to create the cake and get it. But it's not the end of the story, because we need the great challenge. And the great challenge in my story is when my grandmama passes away her also. And if you watch my speech, I almost crumble myself. I'm overcome by emotion when I share this particular part of my story, because I go back to that time when I was thinking maybe this is the end of our tradition and of our family. And to make it more dramatic and maybe more relatable, I compare with the movie or the musical Fiddler on the Roof. Now, the seemingly impossible odds are, we go over the hurdle because of the next generation, the cousins who hold the torch. And this is where I see the transformation, is when I realize that our family is staying together because of our yearly tradition. It's my own personal realization. And now at the very end, I can share the wisdom by inviting the audience to do the same. And it's not only about family. And so this is where, this is a little side note for you. Because when I was developing this, I thought, okay, people are going to, if they follow my advice or my wisdom, they might create or uphold tradition in their family. But I asked myself, is this going to make the world a better place? Or is it just going to make families better or hold together more? So this is where at the very end, and I invite you to watch the speech, it's very short. I speak of family traditions, traditions in your community or in your workplace or in your social group. So I make it more universal. And I end by sharing the wisdom simply by saying traditions hold us together. So this is, it's almost like I retold the speech. I don't even know if what I've said now is longer than the speech itself. But there is the example. And what I'd like you to do, now we won't have time to give many examples unless, I've got an idea.
Alexander, you do have some time, some extra time. So
I have some, okay.
yes,
how much extra time?
You have 20 minutes.
20 more minutes from now?
Yes. I talked to Father Time. I extended the time for you, so don't rush.
Wow.
Keep going.
Okay. Thanks. All right. I'll take it if the audience is fine with it. Because now I could ask you to try it and give you a few minutes just to try writing your own outline of your own story. I do see in the chat, is this your speech? I think this is, so the first link that we see there on Facebook, that's actually the Emperor Toastmasters who stole the speech and who captured it live and put it on Facebook. So yes, that is the speech, but Joshua wrote the official link from Toastmasters International. So yes, that's the one that you can look at. Is there a question from Milind? Yes, go ahead.
Yeah, hi, Alexander. Thank you very much for what you spoke till now, and I'm looking forward to the next section also. My question is, typically we have been told that when you are doing a speech, you should give a personal story, so which you have covered it quite well. But they also say that not just one personal story, you should have maybe a couple of anecdotes or at least some follow-up story also. So, whereas if I remember well, in your story, in your speech, you had not. So, I just wanted to understand your is it not advisable to embellish your speech with your story and someone else's story, or what's your view on that? Just wanted to talk to you on that.
I don't think there's a correct answer here. But in my final speech, I do reference Fiddler on the Roof, the movie or musical. So there is that example. So it does add something extra, and the real reason why I did it was not to embellish or to add another argument. It was because that was one of the inspirations for my speech. I'm so moved by that story of Fiddler on the Roof and the character, especially after I became a father. I became even more attached to the main character of Tevier, that I wanted to include it. So it was more. I'll tell you this: it was more difficult to include those references than when I had a previous version where I didn't have it. So I put more effort into trying to have that because it was important for me. The other example that I can give you is from my semi-final speech. It's very personal. It's about conversations during a ski trip, conversations in a family reunion. But because I wanted, now this, I made a conscious effort to add something extra. So to use your word, to embellish it, because I wanted to put more weight on it. And I used the example from South Africa of the Nelson Mandela and the president at the time. I forget who was the president before Mandela, but it was to give a great example of world leaders just discussing, even though they are completely opposite.
Yeah.
Alexander, we have a question from Amit.
Wait, okay, Amit, sure.
Yeah, hi, Alexander, and thank you for sharing those wonderful insights. My question is, so the 6 steps that you mentioned, now out of those 6 steps, is there any scope of deviating slightly from those steps? Or maybe in some situations, like for example, at the end, instead of the hero coming out as victorious, if the hero fails, can we still create that impact? Do you think there is room for experimentation in any of those 6 steps? If yes, then how and where?
Yes, by all means. Now, this is a basis for you writing your next story or your next speech. Please do experiment. What I encourage you to do is that especially if you hesitate or you're not sure how to craft a story, these steps are a great stepping stone to writing something very original. So use those 6 steps, and if you want to go further, we can keep in contact, because when I've created my speeches, I've used 4 more steps like in between. So there's more that you can do. And also, not only can you deviate a little bit, but you can sometimes even do some flash forward and flashbacks. So you can really play with the model. But this is a way for you to have like your first draft of your story. Because I wouldn't want anybody to follow this so rigidly that all the speeches sound the same. It's like the Disney movies and the superhero movies. You've seen one, you've seen them all. But sometimes there's one there's one those speeches that come out. It's of the mold. Those are the best ones.
We have one.
Just as a follow-up, sorry, if I can just.
Oh, no
Okay.
worries. Go ahead,
Thank
Amit.
you so much. Thank you. So just as a follow-up, so if the hero fails, do you think it's worth experimenting that? Do you think that can still have an impact?
Yes, and we could discuss this a long time, but when the hero fails, and if it's yourself who failed at, I don't know, we talked about the example of a health issue. So if you fail, it's either one of two things. You failed so much that you learn something from it, so you still gain wisdom, or the example that I gave earlier from the teenagers, maybe your story isn't over and it's not yet ready to share with the world.
Okay.
I do want, I know there might be another question, but before that, I invite you to, here, let me go back to sharing here, because I want to give you a few minutes just to start writing down your next, the draft of your next story. Just 1 or 2 sentences for each step. So I'll keep taking questions, but you can start writing down, and I can put it back to this so you can see it bigger. So just while I take more questions, start taking notes of what could be your next story. So either take a story that you've already shared, or something completely new that you've wanted to share, but that you wanted to write or tell, but you were never able to do because you weren't sure where to start. This might be the day that you can finally write that story. So is there another question?
Yeah, there was a question from DeMarie. DeMarie, do you have a question?
Yes, DeMarie?
Yes, I wanted to ask a question about vulnerability. If you're telling a story and you actually feel your own voice beginning to change because of how much the story itself is affecting you, is that a story that you need to even be telling? And can you take it around and use it to your advantage?
It's one more reason to share it. I mean, of course, if you are crumbling over and you're not able to finish your sentence because it's too emotional, then you might not be ready to share it with a large audience. But it might be a first step for you to create that story, and then when you're able to tell it without falling over in your own puddle of tears, then you might be ready. And I mean, some people, you might have heard this from someone else. Don't use the speech platform as therapy. The audience is not your therapist. So if you're like still going through the pain and you haven't gone over it yet, then it's not ready for the big stage. But maybe it's ready for a small Toastmasters group, or even then that's an audience, but maybe just for yourself and a few friends, and maybe your therapist. And when you're over it and you're able to share it, then that makes a great story.
That is so insightful. Thank you so much.
Of course, DeMarie.
Thank you, DeMarie, for that question. Are there any more questions? Alexander, you have around 5 minutes left.
Okay. I'm curious, has anybody started writing down? I don't see any like scribbling, but have you started? Yeah, I see James is
I think they're typing.
Use my phone to take pictures of everything you have.
Okay. Cool.
Alexander, the story I always remember with Joseph Campbell is Star Wars.
Oh yes, of course. Oh yeah, and if you really study Star Wars,
Yeah.
Through that model, you see stories from you see parallels with the Bible, right?
Yeah.
With some very old
It's a
stories.
hero's
And
journey. Yeah.
Mhm.
I never thought about it that way. It brings a new light in how to craft your speeches too. It's like the answer is there.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And it's also a good way, this model is also a good way for you to take a speech that you already have and analyze and see, okay, do I have all these steps? And if you don't, maybe that it's time to revisit it and see, okay, now I can understand why it's not as effective as it could have been with my audiences.
This is a prime example of the art of storytelling too, right? So it's just great. So
Yes. All right, let me stop this share and I will ask if someone in the audience very quickly would like to share what you've started to develop. James, yes. Are you ready to share?
Well, it's a start for
Okay.
the story, and it was a very interesting experience for me. I worked at Zappos, and as part of working at Zappos, I actually got close to the CEO, Tony Hsieh. I'm not sure how many people are familiar with Tony's story, but it was actually pretty tragic. But he was a very amazing individual and mentor. I was with him for a lot of stuff, got offered to double my salary to move up to Park City to work for him after he left Zappos, and later he died uh, in a fire accident. So part of what he was trying to do was around what he was calling market-based dynamics, and I was one of his avid supporters. And I feel that he died prior to it really reaching its full potential. So I feel like I'm in a good spot where I could probably tell a good portion of the story or reflect on that and maybe help say, hey, after the transformations and what I've learned, this may be something that can help reflect some of his legacy.
Yeah, yeah, and that's interesting to be an homage or a legacy for someone else. So it's not putting you on a pedestal. Tell me quickly, what do you see as the great challenge of that story?
For the one of the challenges for the market-based dynamics of what he was trying to do was try to reorganize how large corporations do business. He identified that the larger the corporations get, the less efficient they tend to be. And normally for ideas, it normally takes a single no to kill the idea. And he wanted to flip the paradigm. So instead of getting a single no to kill the idea, all you needed was a single yes, and then the idea was being funded, and then it could actually go and run. I got references, and I can go into details. There's a Chinese company called Hire that was doing something similar, and I got analogies similar to how Jeff Bezos would do the two pizza teams at Amazon. So I can pull in sites and references depending on how long I want it to be. But if we're looking for the short, succinct version, I'll have to work on that.
Yeah. So what I encourage you to try out, and I don't know you enough, but maybe try to make it personal. So if you have a personal example where you succeeded or you managed to use that model in a company, then that would be more interesting. Because up to now it sounds what's the word? Not concrete. What's the opposite of not of concrete?
Vague.
Did you say faith?
Vague.
Vague. Yeah, like theoretical. Sounds theoretical. So if you're able to find a real example, especially if you were involved in it, then that would be more interesting for you as well as for the audience. But I'm thinking in the context of the speech contest and a wide audience. But if your audience is like business based and business owners, then it might be something else. James, thank you so much for sharing. What I'd like to do now is share with you one. I told you about links, right? So let me send you the link to. Excuse me, I need to click a few things here. Here's a great resource to learn more about the hero's journey. I'll put it directly in the chat. Voila. So you'll see more about those 12 steps. But I also want to share something else. Because you've been a great audience, I'd like to know if this was useful to you. And you can let me know through this link of it's for an evaluation of my workshop today. And if you follow that link and you fill it in, you'll get the PDF of that, of the 6 steps to be able to craft your next great speech, as well as have more information about what I can offer if you're interested to learn more. I was really pleased to be able to present to you today. You've been a great audience. It looks like you're really, really listening and you're really interested in learning more. So I hope this has been useful to you. And if it has, give me a thumbs up. Was it useful to you? Oh, phew. I was worried that maybe
I had 4 thumbs, I'd give it to you, but I only have 2.
Oh,
so
thank you so much. So I will give it back to the Toastmaster of the day. Thank you so much. Back to you, Ashwin.
thank you so much, Jonathan, for a great speech. Everyone give him a great hand. Thank you. So much invaluable information that I'm going to go and craft a speech today. I'm not sure if it's going to be great or not, but I'm going to start today. So thank you very much. And I'm glad we got some extra time with you. Well, without further ado, I'd like to introduce our next speaker today. It's DTM Joshua. Well, he's an entrepreneur, a Toastmaster, and served at District 27. And today he's talking about ethical leadership. So no money laundering through Toastmasters, Joshua? No?
No.
Oh, all right.
Well,
all right.
maybe. We'll talk about
Well,
that.
we'll talk offline. We'll talk offline. No worries. No worries. All right, Joshua, you have some time, so take it away.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Mr. Toastmaster. Thank you very much to all the awesome people here tonight. Thank you for staying up with me. It's 10:30 Eastern Standard Time where I'm at. So if that doesn't tell you anything about my dedication to Toastmasters, I'm here late at night. I should be in bed, but I'm here with you, and that makes me happy inside. And I just want to give a special shout out to our first speaker, Alexandre. Thank you so much for sharing your tips. Being a speaking coach myself, I know that your tips are invaluable, and I thank you for sharing your model. So let's give him another round of applause before I even start. Thank you so much. So this is very interesting to be here because I was asked to speak about ethical leadership. And of all people to ask about ethical leadership, they chose me. Can you believe it? The guy that's been penalized for 12 counts of felony espionage and all kinds of different things. I can't believe you had me invited here tonight. Oh, sorry. Was I supposed to say that? I thought that was something I was supposed to give to the Toastmaster, introduce me, but I forgot to do that. Phew, thank gosh. Let's just keep that between the monks of all of us, all 31 of us, okay? I'm 32 on this list. Let's not forget about anybody else. Don't worry about it. But with that said, I want to just launch my PowerPoint real quick with you guys. So give me just a moment as I set that up, because it's going to set some of the basis of what I want to present here tonight with all of you. So let me just get it all formatted here, make sure that I can see the chat, because that's really important. I see your smiling faces. Oh, beautiful, 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 beautiful. Okay, I think we are ready to go. Oh, yeah. So let me give you a little bit of my background. Yeah, I'm an entrepreneur. Yeah, I'm a Toastmaster. But you know how I started? Just like you. Figuring out for the first time, what is Toastmasters all about? How is this going to help me? I was professional myself. I work over here in Pennsylvania in the United States, which is on the eastern border. You might have heard us in the news. We had a big bridge that burned down on Interstate 95 for my United States folks. Yes, I'm in that state. It is scary. I'm glad I'm not near that because I'm towards the south central part of the state. So whew, thank goodness. Because I don't have to worry about that. But there's going to be some people in big trouble with that. But that only tells one part of the story. See, the biggest story that I have to tell is that about my ethics and about what it means to be not only just somebody that has been a servant leader for over a decade in this organization, which for all those that are curious, I've been involved specifically since April of 2012. So if you do the math, I know it's late, but the math means that and you might be asking yourself, didn't you learn something already? Is it time for you to quit? Like, get out of here, Josh. You're washed up. You're done. You learned everything you could. Oh, you're wrong, ladies and gentlemen. I think that we have so much yet to learn, and my journey is only just beginning. So with all that said, with all those things that I do, let me tell you a little bit about who I am. Earlier this year, I actually opened a business myself, just like our great first speaker, called Your Speaking Voice. It's geared towards helping all kinds of different people, which I'm going to talk about a little bit later on. But the main premise of sharing you all of this is to say simply, I have to think about ethics on a daily basis. Before I even opened this business, I've been involved with the state of Pennsylvania as a public servant for over 13 years. I've done it all. I've worked with people that needed assistance the most, public assistance, whether that is through cash assistance, food stamps, things of that nature. I've actually been a legal compliance officer, writing responses to actual requests for records. I've been doing all kinds of buying. I've been a budget person. I've been working with the blind. Yes, I've worked with the blind to help them be entrepreneurs themselves. But through all those different things, and even what I do now, which is really looking at data and figuring out what's really cool about telling a story with data, is really telling a story about our ethics. So real quick, in the chat, can you tell me in 1 or 2 words what you think ethical leadership is? Because I kind of want to have an idea of who I'm working with tonight. So in chat, tell me what 1 word or 2 words would you describe ethical leadership being? Great. Ashburn says honest. Thank you. That kicks us off. So being honest is something that is a trait with ethical leadership. What else? Great. Integrity. Now they're rolling in. Integrity, being transparent, integrity. Wow. I love the word integrity. Respect. Somebody's been reading the Toastmaster values. Good job. Responsible. Inclusion. You private messaged me yet, but I had conscientious. No one else sees it, but I see it. Conscientious. Very good. So those are just some of the words that I think of too. But I love this quote by Edward Hennessy where it says, ethics must be at the top of an organization. It is a leadership issue, and the chief executive must set the example. By a thumbs up, does anybody know of somebody that has been unethical in their lives? Just put a thumbs up if you have. Yeah. Thank you. Thank you for those that kept their cameras on, because I can see those expressions as well. The first speaker already set it up for me. So thank you, Alexandre. Appreciate that. But yes, I know of many people throughout my life that have been unethical. And it's really a judgment call. It's a characteristic. I have come across many different people, and even in my own life, that comes to that, which I'm going to share in just a moment. But when we talk about ethics, it's that code. It's that essentially words, phrases, things of that nature that we stand by, knowing that if we can lead, and we can lead with all the things that you have put in chat, that can make us not only fulfilled inside, but also fulfilled to help others in the quest of whatever we do. It doesn't matter if you're going to be a business owner, which I hope many of you are, especially being Toastmaster professionals. Hey, I think that you should be the trendsetters, no matter where you're at in the globe, to be able to do that. But also, more importantly, ethics is much more than just setting that tone. Even if you are just an employee down in the ranks, trudging along. Oh, yeah, it's another day. I got my coffee. I'm sitting at my cube. Oh, it's just going to be another one of those days, right, Bobby? No, it's not. You are just as important in that whole cog of making things important for ethics to happen. Because to be ethical, sometimes you don't even need to see anybody else looking at you to be ethical. In other words, even if nobody else is around, you have to make a big difference in no matter what anybody is saying, seeing, or doing. It's leadership at every level. Thank you. See, I even got a world champion of public speaking, first runner-up, even telling me this. See, I'm learning even more after this. I didn't realize that. But yes, it's actually true. It's at all levels. So even as we talk about ethics, we got to talk about the personal nitty gritty. And I love that one of the questions that we had from the last speaker was about how vulnerable can I be with telling my story? Well, I'm going to be very vulnerable in telling my story today because there's a lot of things that I've learned in the 13 years that I've been in the workforce that I want to share with you. I've had, over the course of my lifetime, numerous incidents of people not only at the same level as me, not even lower than me, which I've had plenty of those too. Those are the people that I supervise because I've been a supervisor as well. But all the people up there, can you believe that? People that are even higher than me, I'm looking at them and I'm like, how could you ever do that? The last time it actually happened to me, 2 years ago. Remember that job I just told you about in which I worked with blind people? Yeah. Now, I don't know if any about you, but imagine having a boss that is blind. Guilty as charged. I had a blind boss. Now, I don't know about you, but somebody that has his full vision and has been able to be appreciative of all the things that I've been able to do over the last 36 years that I've lived on this earth, I'm pretty darn lucky to have my vision. So to work with somebody that didn't and was really successful and to be able to work in the confines of what that enablement allows him to do, not disablement, but enablement, has really changed the scope of the game for me. But there was really one problem. This guy cut corners. Let's call him Rob. Rob was somebody that at the beginning, I thought that he had the best intentions, thinking that he was going to help me with all these other assignments and projects that he was going to have me do. And he was going to back me up no matter what. Well, I was wrong. As a matter of fact, at every opportunity that he could, so that he would avoid being blamed, he would throw me under that rolling bus or that moving vehicle. Or for those that are from another country, imagine getting run over by a bicycle, because that's essentially what happened to me at a very slow rate of speed. You see, Rob was somebody that really didn't understand how to work with employees. Although he was blind, I know that he was fully capable. He was a successful attorney before he became a public servant. He has worked with all kinds of commissions and boards in the past in his capacity. I thought this guy had it all together. Well, one day he said, Josh, you have to start writing down every single little thing that you're doing because I don't believe what you're doing. And I need a report every day of every single thing that you've done. Well, guess what? What do you guys think happened with that? What do you think I decided to do? Nobody knows? Oh, come on. There's got to be a guess. What do you think I did?
Nothing.
I left. Oh, it felt too late. I'm sorry. Time's up. I'm left. I got the first nearest job and left. So yes, for all those that putting in chat, I quit and I left. Absolutely. Because he didn't have any integrity. He wasn't fair. So as a result of all of that, I left, and I have the job that I have now. Now, you want to hear the exciting conclusion? Rob, along with the rest of the executive team, was fired. That's right. They were asked to leave because they carried on these charades, not only with me, but a whole host of employees, to the point that it got to the big boss, which in Commonwealth government and even in the United States, we call them secretaries. It got to the secretary, which is the biggest leader, the head honcho. The buck stops with them. They said, "We're done with you. Adios." And when I heard that, I was redeemed. Because sometimes doing things that are right, especially ethically, is very hard to do. It's putting yourself on the line. It's putting you on the things that sometimes, even with all this experience that we have, it's one big puzzle piece, which is why I put this graphic on this slide. Because we are all putting those things together that allow us to encompass who we are. Because each and every one of you is unique. And believe it or not, my uniqueness is not going to be the same as your uniqueness. But at the same time, we all have a story to tell. We just learned how to write that hero story. This is the time that we can write this story for us to continue being ethical. So let me walk you through some takeaways that I've learned with that might be helpful for you. So the first thing is, stay true to yourself and your values. That's very hard to do. Does anybody know what the 4 values of Toastmasters are?
Respect,
Anybody,
integrity,
just shout it out.
respect, service, integrity, and excellence.
Thank you. Very good. And we have the acronym. You just had to spell it that way, did you? Yes, integrity, respect, service, and excellence. Those are the values that all Toastmaster clubs stand on, just like your club stands on. Those are the things that help us to carry it forward. So to stay true to ourselves means integrating those values in order to be ethical. There are plenty of case studies where you see that executives make shortcuts and they don't make ethical decisions. As a matter of fact, they're the most terrible decisions that they have ever made. Next, I said this earlier, do the right thing, even if nobody else is looking. I know that sounds a little cliche. Some of you might have even heard this expression before, but it's still true even in the ethical realm. If you know that you're doing something right, inside you have that good feeling. When I had that good feeling when I walked away from Rob and knew that I was never going to come back to that until something changed, I knew that I was doing the right thing. No one else had to tell me that. That was a decision all by myself. I had to do it. But did that mean that I was insubordinate? And I told Rob, no, I'm not going to do that list. Well, actually, I did do that list. I did that every day because I still had a job to do. And if he was expecting me to do it, I will respect that. But that doesn't mean that I respect the person that is making an unethical decision. Because I know that I was doing the right thing. And it's about understanding that difference and separating that out. Those are the things that I continuously try to push, even in my own life, even after 2 years of not dealing with that sort of work. Even when nobody else is looking, do the right thing. And if that doesn't help you, think about this in a Toastmasters capacity. Examine in the lens of others what you're doing and saying is true, and receive feedback on the right course or path. Feedback is so important. You could easily dive into a completely different direction thinking that you're doing the right thing. But in ethics, it's about not just those values, but they also have to have meaning behind it. So if you don't have that meaning and you don't have that ethnicity to be able to continue to do that with the ethics that you have, get feedback. This is a great laboratory. I've always called Toastmasters that to even the people that I've mentored over the course of over a decade. Even if you're wrong, say it here and get the feedback from all the different types of people. You have a global perspective here. And I really appreciate that here at this club that I'm visiting. Because without that, you're never going to see the bigger worldview, which is something that I always tell my clients to do through my business. Always look at the bigger picture. But also, consider the source of where your information is coming from. I always ask the 3 questions. Is it reliable? Is it credible? Is it 100% fact-based? This is the time I'll say, don't tell yourself a story. Now, for those that aren't familiar with the term crucial conversations, there was a great author by the name of Joseph Grenny. I'll put a link in chat for you of the book that I read that forever changed my life. Joseph Grenny, along with 4 other authors, wrote a book called Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue. In that, it talks about the importance of being able to share different perspectives in a safe, positive environment that doesn't lead to any silence or verbal violence. But within all of that, we're able to exchange information that's reliable, credible, and fact-based. Because when we start to tell stories about what these people are doing, we're making assumptions. And assumptions, well, I'm not going to say it because it involves a swear word, and I don't want to swear in front of all you. All you are professionals. I have that respect for you. So if you really are curious, private message me. I'll tell you what assume means. And actually, if you break it down, it already says what it means. However, for me and for all of us, being professionals, we have to be reliable, credible, and fact-based so that we can approach ethics in the most honest and appropriate way. Now, I want to be respectful of time. I was told 15 to 20 minutes. I was generously asked to give 30 minutes because of our first speaker, but I want to respect that because all of you have been great. Just like Alexandre also said to all of you, I think you guys are awesome. So let me leave you with a couple things. First off, I've been a Toastmaster for over 11 years. If you're interested in following me, I have a LinkedIn page. That is my email. And yes, that is my phone number for the United States. +1 for all those that are overseas. So the first number would be +1. Please text me, call me. I have WhatsApp. If you're familiar with that, please utilize that. I'm available. I love what Toastmasters has done. As a matter of fact, I want to be alive because of Toastmasters. And I literally mean that. 2 Toastmasters saved my life 3 years ago. And I wouldn't be standing before you as a result of that experience. That's how much I believe in this organization. I am what's called a lifer, in which I want to help all of you succeed. With that helpfulness of being able to succeed, I do have a business. I did mention it, Your Speaking Voice. I'm a public speaking coach. I do life coaching, professional development. I do business coaching with helping with your branding and messaging. I also prepare you for job interviews and also work on your resume. If you are interested in checking me out, I have my website, www.yourspeakingvoice.biz, which I'll put in chat after I'm done here. But I also started a new project just in the last few weeks called a podcast. It's called Speaking from the Heart. Speaking from the Heart is a podcast that talks about authentic conversations in order to become the best versions of ourselves. Because just like ethics, in order for us to be the best version of ourselves, we need to piece apart what's really holding us back. And that's really a good premise of what Toastmasters is all about. I just started in the last few weeks. Episode number 5 just released today. You could go check episode number 5 plus all the other episodes that published the last few weeks at my website, which I'll also put there. If you want to be a guest, please email me at podcast@yourspeakingvoice.biz. We can talk. But I want to say this to close out, because this isn't about marketing. This is about ethics. Ethics is the choice that you decide to make. Yes, I'm looking at each and every one of you in this camera that I'm looking at because I'm virtual just like all of you. We all have to be ethically concerned about all kinds of things. We have to be ethically concerned not only on our jobs, but also in the things that we do. Don't be stewing and being afraid of stepping up and saying what's on your heart when it comes to that. Because To have good ethics means you start the conversation. And hey, what is Toastmasters? What kind of organization is Toastmasters, everybody?
Voluntary organization.
Oh, come on. You don't know. That's what I want to hear. All of you, you communicate. That is what's really important, is that you communicate. That's the key. For all of you to be able to do that, you already started on the path of ethics. Mr. Toastmaster, back to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joshua. I love the energy. No more Red Bulls before you speak anymore. All right. I love it. Would you be open for like a few minutes of questions, or is that okay? Or
yeah, absolutely. I just want to throw my links in chat. I got that done. So if anybody has any questions, feel free to ask me.
does anybody have any questions for Joshua now that his information is out on the internet now? That's a dangerous thing, Joshua.
No, it's not, because I trust in each and every one of you, and I'm being vulnerable.
Now, you say you're a lifer, so how long has it been since you've been a Toastmaster so far?
So I did say that it's been 11 years, but I'm going to be honest with you. It started even before that, in which I had a friend that recommended to me, you need to go and check this out. And I lived in a different place. I had a different lifestyle at that time. I was thinking, there is no way that I'm going to go in and give my icebreaker speech, or I'm never going to join and check this out. I'm never going to walk in the door. Well, here I am at almost 11 o'clock my time at night, giving a presentation, because I have been enthused by so much positive energy and support from all of you as a part of that process. And that comes from people that have lived around me all the way up, even through the last few years. So that's a great thing to do. It's just to continue to surround yourself with that, to help yourself to understand that it doesn't matter when it starts. It can start right now. So for those that are just starting out, I was in your shoes. Here's your first step. Do it. Do the icebreaker. Because once you do the icebreaker, your world will change forever. I guarantee you, 100, 1,000, 10,000%.
Absolutely, I agree with you. And not even just do it, join. It took me 10 years before I joined, and I'm glad I did. I wasted 10 years of not joining, and it did change my life too. I remember being picked on, and your blood starts like raising, you start to get warm. It's like, what do I say? Now it's just babble. Blah, blah, blah. So thank you so much. Does anybody have any questions? It's free. He's not charging right now.
No, I'm not. This is the time to do it. I will say, if you ever are interested in actually having a consultation, my first consultation is always free. I do it for an hour. It's a lot more longer than most competitors. I do it because I want to understand the person and get involved with what you are actually trying to achieve. That's what's important to me. I always wanted that mentor, especially from my dad. My dad, unfortunately, wasn't really a great mentor for me. So that's why I do what I do to help others. So, but anyways, questions, anybody?
I agree with you. I think Alexander had a question, but he said thumbs up. So, well, yeah, we have a few minutes left. If there's any questions, you're welcome to email Joshua. I just want to say thank you so much for being here for the club officers election and the two greatest speakers that I've ever heard. You like that? So give it up for the speakers. I've learned a lot, and I hope you guys learned a lot too. And I would like to hand this over to our esteemed president, who's deep in thought right now.
Thank you. I believe Milind has a question for.
No, there you are. Oh, yes. Sorry, Milind.
So, hi, Joshua. A very interesting talk. I have a question which often intrigues my mind. We talk of integrity, respect, service, and excellence are the 4 core values of Toastmasters. If I were to ask you which among these is the most important, what would your answer be?
Wow, what a great question. And I would struggle to narrow it down to one, but since you asked it that way, I will choose one for you. And that has to be respect. And for the reason I say respect is that for a lot of us, even starting out, we sometimes have never gotten that respect, whether that was in the workplace, whether that was something that we did personally, maybe that is from our family, maybe that's from friends. I'll tell you, I actually resonated from Ashvin in that I was picked on growing up. I was very obese. I'm still overweight, but I'm working on myself because that's part of the journey that we go on. But I believe in respect in not only this organization, but in the grand scheme of things. Because we all come from different paths. And I didn't understand my very first convention and up here, but what I was saying is that my very first time that I saw that respect was that when I went to an international convention in 2018 in Chicago, and I met and saw Ramona Smith win the World Championship public speaking, because her story resonated with me in that I had so much going on in my life. And if you hear her speech, go Google it on YouTube. You'll hear about some of the struggles that she had in each stage of her life. It changed my perspective on this is not just me in my backyard going to a Toastmasters club. This was me going in my backyard with all my friends from 140 some countries and understanding and respecting each of those cultures. That is what gave me the growth potential. And that's only happened in the last 5 years of my life that I've been able to have that blessing. Being a club growth director, which I resonate so much with Vaji. Congratulations on being PQD if you're still there. I remember those days being so proud of being able to help others. That's what this is about, being respectful. Thanks for putting me on the spot. That was very tough for me to answer because I could pick any one of those and tell you an awesome reason why.
Yeah, I fully agree with you, Joshua. And sorry, Ashwin, I'm taking a couple of minutes. I recently gave a speech at a club, and that time I too was thinking about it because I feel that as a person, having integrity, being service-minded, excelling in whatever you're doing happens. But giving respect, I think you really have to work on it. Is my experience. I also have been a club growth director. Rather, I will complete my term in another 15 days. And I have learned this, that, you really need to respect and understand your members, your area directors, division directors, and how they struggle and, what they go through to keep your district. So I fully concur with you, Joshua, and thank you for giving me that confidence that I am right. Back to you, Joshua.
You have that confidence. And I'm going to say something that's probably something that most people don't hear about Toastmasters, that I'm sure your club mentors, since I know you first started, you're going to be like, oh my gosh, Josh, now I got to clean this up. And now I'm going to blame you for this. So sorry, Susan, Ashwin, I'm going to say something that's probably out of turn. I hear all the time about not talking about certain subjects, not talking about certain things, but I want to challenge that status quo for a moment. What if we talk about things that are on our minds, but at the same time understand that we need to be respectful to our audience and knowing our audience when it comes to that? What if we challenge that for once? So here in the United States, talking about politics, talking about gender, those are taboo subjects in so many ways. But in other countries, that could get you killed. And I understand that, and I respect you for having to go through something like that. But here's the deal. When we start to open the conversation about what those things are so that we can expand our mindsets, you hit it right on the head. It's all about understanding what that bigger worldview is. And that ties into even ethics. If I don't speak up, I am just as unethical as that other person that does not speak up too. So being able to understand that and branch out from that is something that I truly value. So don't be afraid to talk about something that is on your mind. But if you understand what that story is and you respect what that story is with all kinds of other people, that's going to make you stand out from the rest, because you're going to have respect for not only that person that's speaking, but yourself. And that is so tough nowadays to do, because we all get bombarded with that negative messaging. It doesn't matter where you're at in the world, the advertisements, your government, all those things. But we all have a voice. We can positively contribute to that, but we can't stay away from taboo. So sorry, club mentors, I probably opened a can of worms. You get a lot of questions. You can send them to me. I'll respond to them on your behalf.
Where is
Now I
Joshua?
see Susan. Susan immediately shot her hand up. So I'm going to let Susan say what she needs to say, if you don't mind, Ashman.
Thank you for clearing up that we have the right to speak about subjects that might be sensitive. I belong to another club that meets in a Buddhist temple. And we recently had a session of the 5 major religions. And each one of them came with great respect to talk about the precepts of their foundation, their religion, in 5 to 7 minutes. It's really high level. And what we found is that the core of this club was to bring peace. And each one of the 5 had some focus on how we can all be peaceful with one another and accept one another. So when some clubs say we don't talk about the subjects, it depends on the audience. This club was primed for it, and it was so wonderful. And we all walked away feeling really good about ourselves and everyone else in the room. And that was a positive step forward, all about peace. We're called peace talkers.
That is so incredible. I want to go join this Buddhist club just because you guys are willing to have that conversation. But that's what's important about this, is that you know your audience. Just like in ethics, you need to know your audience and understand when to say it, how to say it. And in that crucial conversations, which I just forgot that I need to put that in chat with you real quick. But the Crucial Conversations for Mastering Dialogue book really talks about having that conversation in a way that's safe and appropriate. It's so easy to go down that path of saying, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that. But if you understand what's truly important with that and respecting that audience, that's what the key is. In chat right now, I'm actually putting an Amazon link if you want to check out the book. I'm sorry for those that live outside the United States. If there is a place that you go and buy your books, I'm sure that there's different translations of this, because a company called Crucial Learning actually has this book all over the world, because people are learning this in different languages as well. So if you do need help finding it, don't hesitate to reach out to me. But thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Joshua. A great session. Like I said, I'd like to hand it back to our esteemed president, Raghu, to close out our meeting.
Wonderful. Thank you. Give me a minute. Okay.
I'd like to also congratulate all the club officers for next term too.
Thank you, Alexander. I'm sorry if I'm questioning your name, but it was me. Thank you for giving the keynote speech. First of all, thank you for accepting, gracing us with your presence and giving the session on the recipe of a winning speech. Thank you very much. Please accept the token of love virtual. I wish I can come over to United States and do it in person, but maybe one day I will. And
Thank you.
Joshua, thank you for accepting. We did discuss exactly more than a month before about this speech, and you did a great job here. And I know you have went through numerous struggles, especially for ethical leadership. This is why I chose you to give this speech today. And you did a great job. Thanks for enlightening us with that. And also they were interviewing questions for you, and you did answer them satisfactorily. Thank you very much for gracing us with your presence and then talking about an important topic, especially on the day of the election service. This is a virtual token of love from us, and I will send them to you both with email. Thank you very much. And DTM Raji, thank you for being here. and conducting the club election, which is very crucial for any club. And promise that we will be updating the officer list in the club central immediately. Oh, with that note, I will stop recording here. 1 minute. Can you stop recording, Ashwin?